Welcome to Sue Q's world. My love of travel started with my passion for penguins. Find out where that has led me as I share experiences of extraordinary destinations, sustainable travel and concepts, wildlife and our environment, whilst recounting the stories and ambitions of people we've met along the way. Traditionally, tourism has focused on increasing revenues and attracting more tourists. The effect on the environment, so water and energy, consumption, pollution, wildlife and their habitats just weren't considered. That's still the case in many areas in the world, but it is changing, and we're seeing quite significant changes in how travellers are choosing their destinations. They're wanting sustainable practices in the hotels and resorts that they're going to visit. I have to say that wasn't top of our list when we booked our first holiday at the Four Seasons Landaa Giraavaru in the Maldives. We returned for a second trip earlier this year and had the pleasure of meeting Faisal Ibrahim. He's the sustainability lead there. Because there are so many initiatives at Landaa, I've decided to do a little mini-series, so both videos and blogs, as I want to shout out about resorts where I can see they're truly focused on leaving the world better than they found it. So this first video is an intro really to the series, where I have a short interview with Faisal, and we're talking about the fact that the resort at Landaa Giraavaru is somewhat leading the way in the Four Seasons group. But you also might be really interested to hear about their different approach to how they offset carbon. They're not buying carbon credits, but they're doing something totally different. So I hope you enjoy this video. So do you think you're a lot farther ahead than other Four Seasons properties with the sustainability programs here? How do you think you're leading the way? I sense you are.
Yes, I think it's safe to say that we are leading the way within the Four Seasons. When I say that because when we looked into the global goals that our corporate assigns every year, most of it is already done from our side every year. There are a couple of things that might come in, new things that we might have to fix it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yes, for example, I mean, if we take the bottling plant story, I mean, we have done it 10 years before, but a lot of Four Seasons hasn't, and now there is an action that needs to be done by every Four Seasons by end of 2023. I think that's a good example for it. Toiletries, removing all the single-use plastics from the guest rooms. We have done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of single-use plastics from the food and beverage servings also have been completed.
Right.
So
okay.
Yeah, and we do quite a bit when it comes to comparison, I suppose, among other Four Seasons.
But it is it's a group-wide initiative, isn't it? I see that at all the hotels. It's just part of the culture really that's been set for the Four Seasons. It's very much around the environment, the sustainability, being self-contained, but also, which I really like, it's also about the people, the local people as well, and getting that balance right. Mm-hmm. That must be quite challenging because you've got, it is a resort. It's a luxury resort here. Very beautiful place. So how do you balance off trying to do all of this, sustainability with running that? Is that challenging?
It is challenging when it comes to running a luxury resort from one hand and trying to do everything sustainably. I think there will be a threshold in everything.
Sure.
However, we can always try to compensate in other ways. For example, I mean, every year we have goals that we set targets to reduce our energy consumptions, and since 2012 we started that particular goals every year, reductions goals, and I think now we are almost coming to that particular threshold that we could no longer do much of a reduction.
Right.
However, I mean, there are ways that we can compensate our carbon emission by, for example, by planting trees, because it's a global issue when it comes to global warming, and we have a carbon footprint of about 7,000 to 8,000 tons of CO2 emissions approximately from Landaa Giraavaru, from our diesel consumptions.
Right.
So we are not particularly interested in buying the whole carbon credit of that particular footprint and saying that we're carbon neutral. Rather, we always try to reduce a little bit and do a meaningful act like planting more trees.
Okay.
Something like that.
And you're doing that project,
Yes.
aren't you?
Yes.
Perhaps you tell me a little bit more about that, because that's quite exciting, actually.
Yeah. So the whole story actually came up with whether we want to, buy carbon credit
Right, yeah.
and say that we are carbon neutral, or you could do something meaningful. So what we thought was, okay, I think planting more trees is more meaningful than just buying some carbon credit and paying off, buying off your way and saying you're carbon neutral, right?
Yeah.
So I think in 2020 we started the whole, talk about it, and we found a project in India there's an organization called TIST. First we partnered with them and we planted 25,000 trees in Tamil Nadu, India. The concept is quite interesting because it supports some of the UN's global goals as well. Like, they have partnered with the local farmers who have lands in very rural areas, and which probably the developments will not come in the next 20 to 30 years, estimate. So they have this small group farmers who are partnered with TIST, and they will give the seedlings to these farmers and a small monthly stipend fee by taking care of those plants for over 20 to 30 years. And these plants, they do it by legally. You cannot harvest it in a near future, because they target for these kind of trees like teak, mahogany, that also attracts a lot of that also sequesters a lot of carbon when they grow up, because they have a huge big trunks. So we partnered with TIST initially in 2021 and planted 25,000 trees. We visited them, and then we found in 2022 we found another organization which does the similar concept, liaising with local farmers. They give a small stipend by taking care of these trees for over 20 years. And they also does cross farming, agro farming in between. They teach them, they educate them, those farmers. So the farmers gets a benefit at the end. The environment, it increases the biodiversity of the area.
Okay.
And in long term, obviously, it will sequester a lot of carbon through our projects. So far, we have planted 35,000 trees. And how we fund is, now we have two approach.
Right.
So this year we have a target of 25,000 trees to plant again. So half of it, we're trying to get it from our employees.
Okay.
Voluntarily.
Yeah.
And the other half from the company itself.
Okay.
And it's quite interesting, and a lot of staffs have already contributed, and we have an interesting concept. Whenever they want to travel, we can calculate how much carbon emission is associated with that person's particular flight, right?
Yeah.
Based on the distance. And we tell them, okay, you traveling from Mumbai to Mumbai for your vacation, and you have 2 tons of CO2 emissions that corresponds to your flight. You can contribute 10 trees to offset these particular 2 tons. Why don't you do it? And it's quite cheap. It's 50 cents per tree, and anybody can afford it, right?
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
So that's how our program is in place at the moment internally. We haven't opened it for the guests as of yet, but maybe it will come in the future once everything is really concrete, I suppose.
Yeah, and that would be a good additional project, because I've just been writing about the reefscapers here and being able to do the coral frames, and had a chat with Kat, one of the marine biologists here the other night. But she did remind me that doing the coral frame isn't really offsetting much actual carbon, but it's something the guests can do and contribute to it. And what I did, it was the same thing. I looked at what is my carbon footprint of coming here from London, to Mali and return. I think it was just over seven tons. And you've only got to do the maths. That equates to a coral frame. Even if you just do a small one.
Yeah.
So at least you're doing something
Then
to
nothing,
contribute
right?
rather than nothing. And we've seen a big difference because we had a water bidder here last year, and we got the same this year. And I know you built the breakwater last year, and all the coral frames have been put out there. I mean, the increase in fish over the year is noticeable for us.
It is
mainly around,
isn't it?
mainly around the coral frames. So it's doing its job. So if you only do that as a guest, at least you're increasing that in environment, and you're offsetting some of your negative footprint around your tourism and your travel at least.
Yes.
But I think opening the tree project to guests, I think is a good one actually. So I hope you do that in the future.
Yes.
But good to know that
Yes.
at least everyone's contributing to it. We had a chat with the manager the other day, the general manager, Armando, and he's very passionate about this project. So it goes from the top down, everybody,
Yes.
which is really good.
Yeah.
Cool.
He talked about so every year we visit the area and we talk to the farmers, and we see the trees growing ourselves. It's quite interesting. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. And you had a visit recently, didn't you?
Yes, we visited last December,
So,
and we had a look of the first plants that we treat. I showed you some pictures.
yes, you did.
The trees has grown really big, I suppose. Yeah.
They grow really, really quickly, teak
Yes.
trees. I didn't realise that.
They had a good rain last year in
Okay.
Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, and some of the farmers take care of it very well because they have more resources than others. But these teak trees, they have to do a minimum amount of work in order to let them grow. So
Yeah.
it's very easy, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's a good project to get people. Super. Thank you, Faisal.
Wow.
It's such a great idea, the tree planting project in India. Faisal shared some photographs with me from his recent trip. I think it was the beginning of 2023. They've planted at that point over 35,000 trees, and that's teak trees and red sandalwood and mahogany trees. And the pictures that you're seeing here, they're 15-month-old teak trees. I never realised teak trees grew quite so quickly. But it's a win-win project for the planet, and I love the fact that the staff can actually get involved, and we did discuss whether that could be opened up to guests or not in the future. I think they're having a think about how that might work. If you're interested in sustainable tourism, then watch out for the next video in my series.